Alrighty, fellas, this is our opportunity. OverDrive Players Only Edition. If we have a good show, you never know. Maybe there's a spin-off available, and Hazy B can just do the Bryan Hayes show, and we could do OverDrive the Players Edition every day. We do what we want. We'll rid ourselves of him.
Bryan, it would be, what would it be? So OverDrive Players Only, and then it would be Bryan.
It's a spin-off of OverDrive. Bryan Hayes show does his own thing, and we do a spin-off. Players Only, NHL Players Only. We do our own thing. He doesn't shake his head at us or yell at us. We just do players-only stuff all day.
Dude, like, you want to give people a little peek behind the curtain. You know, when we're doing an interview, and especially when we're remote, there is a group chat. Yep. And if you send the thumbs up, it's like you are asking the next question. If there's no thumbs up, that means it's Hazy's question. And he loves when there's no thumbs up, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow. He loves that. Is there anything we could do today on this show that would get his attention? Like to send a text to Doogie saying, what's going on there? What's happening?
He already did it. Doogie already did it. He photoshopped my face on Hayes' body, which is so unacceptable in so many ways.
I like that move.
I can't believe Doogie would jam me up like that.
I loved it, though, because the picture is when Hayes is skinny, right? It wasn't when it was Hayes. It was when that wasn't a blue lunch picture.
There is no more
Hayes.
Pictures of him being a monster circulating. It's almost like he hired somebody to go into a computer
to scrub the internet.
Scrub the internet, man. He paid a lot of money.
Yeah, he went on the dark web because his buddy Al's brother, very familiar with the dark web because of all his football stuff. He found the Toronto Ray Donovan that just scrubs the internet and takes care of all these problems, and Hayes is best buddies with him. He got it scrubbed.
Yeah, I think it's possible. I will admit, though, I felt like, okay, if today somehow goes off the rails, I was going to say we might have an opportunity to, like, phone a friend or something. I had a good chat with Gord Miller, our buddy, today, and Gord's like, hey, let me know if things go sideways. In a segment or something, we could phone a friend and have him, like, talk us through it. But I love
talking hockey with Gord. We can call him at any time. We can call him at any time. This is the other question about Hayes I was wondering. Yeah. Is there anybody in the hockey world, sports executive, that would catch wind of Hayes not being on the show and would say, yeah, if he's not there, I'll come on, because he's offended. He has taken some markets and absolutely tossed them in the toilet.
You know what?
You're right. Can't have this,
I think it's like anyone from Jersey, anyone from Buffalo, maybe anything to do with Utah Hockey Club, because he has absolutely taken them and flushed them down.
Throw Philadelphia in there as well, because he loves getting on torts, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. You know what? You're right. There are marketplaces. I guarantee you, all of a sudden, if we called Ken Danico in New Jersey, he'd be like, I'm coming on the show. No problem. But before, I'm not sure. Not sure if I'm available. Bryce Salvador, same thing. Like, those guys are aware of our show.
You know why? Because he has a classic line. It goes like this. Nobody cares about anybody in New Jersey and what they think. When he hates a market and it's low, like it's just kind of a bottom feeder, and that market is struggling, that guy turns into a shark and he wants to attack.
Let me ask you guys this. Let's say like it's a social environment, there's like it's cocktail hour somewhere. And Matt Barnaby and Rob Ray are hanging out and Hayes has to walk right by them. How do you think that interaction goes down? Is that just like a little bit of like, I can't see you?
Maybe not Rob Ray, but I think Matthew Barnaby would shake his hand. The thing about all of us is whenever we dump on somebody, we're generally not making it up. Like we're not going after somebody for no reason.
No, but it feels like there's times where it's unnecessary. That's the thing. Like it's like we'll be talking about anything, like the sky is blue, whatever. Well, it's not blue in Buffalo. Like somehow it'll get spun back to. And I will say there's a thin layer. And Bryan gives the market, the city, and rightfully so, lots of love just because of how beautiful everything is and how storied. But it's Montreal too. There, that when Montreal came back to beat the Leafs, that was a devastating loss, right? That one still chaps his ass. And there are times where I feel like there's an extra dig for Montreal, but it's because, it's like, I
there's scar
it.
tissue there from the Montreal Canadiens.
There's some built up scar tissue. I get that. But he loves the city so much. We all do. We love that city. It's an amazing. Frank, you call games there. We've been there as OverDrive. Like nothing better than the Bell Center on a Saturday night, playing the Leafs, all of that type of stuff. Like that's a storied franchise. But I do believe there is that, a little bit of a rivalry in Brian's mind because, listen, the Leafs have had a long storied history with the Montreal Canadiens. So there is a little extra there. Other organizations, I don't think he really goes after that much. He gives love to Ottawa because he knows I'm there all the time. For the most part, he just points out what's honest. And
no one cares about what people in New Jersey think.
Thank you. It's one of the. It's a hall with some plaques in it. That's been scrubbed from the database as well. Noodles, you know what that just reminded me of?
It's a hall with some plaques in there.
Oh God. Like you talking about him in that manner reminded me of if they were ever going to do like a documentary on Bryan Hayes and they had sit-down interviews with all of us and you had to talk about Hazy B, that's a 45-second on like how much he reveres Montreal but hates the fact that they came back and beat the Leafs that year.
That's one of the saddest times I've ever seen them. When they lost that series, we've dealt with heartbreak where it was like the Boston Bruins in Boston, and then that one happened. I didn't know because I just didn't know where his headspace would be at. We
all were. They were up 3-1. We're talking about moving on. We're talking about, and Montreal wasn't a great team. They were a team that just kind of found lightning in a bottle. All of a sudden, Carey Price became Carey Price again. That was Carey Price's swan song because that was it. Like he came back and after the injury, played one game, got back, but that was his swan song. Take the team to the finals, and we'll see you later. We'll see you in the Hall of Fame next time he's really, brought to the forefront. But that was, Cole Caulfield, Nick Suzuki were on that team. That team, right? There was Josh Anderson, I believe, was on that team. Gallagher, there's a few guys left. Armia, I think there's a few guys left over. Now it's been a turnover. But that one, I will say, and I don't know, you weren't on the show when the comeback. It was just me and Brian, wasn't it? Or was it the three of us?
What comeback?
No, the Bruins
in
one.
2013?
The Boston one. Yeah, the 2013.
I was working with Taddy at the time.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, I was doing you guys were doing Leafs lunch, and I was doing the games with Taddy in intermission.
See, I didn't even know how to react. I think you guys well documented. My dad passed that week, and game 4 that day we were on the panel or whatever, and he passed, and I flew home for a week, but I was still obviously tracking everything. And then when that happened, I didn't know what to do. I called Hayes, and he actually took my call, which was weird, but him and I are very close, and I just was like, I don't even know what to say. And he was, he was beside himself. He was in shock. We all were, but it was just the most random ever thing. That was my kind of welcome to Toronto moment, because I was about a year into my media career or whatever and working with Brian, and that was
I think I remember seeing you on a back call. You went to some of the games in Boston, did you not?
Well, we went down to Boston. Now I'm wondering if that was a different, maybe later in the playoffs they sent me in dregs, but Hayes and I went to Boston for you're right, maybe for some of those games. I thought, didn't you come to Boston too, or it was just me and Hayes?
No, it was just you.
So it was earlier in that series then. Brian and I went down, and we had I think J-Mac set us up at a bar across from the Garden. We had great shows from down there, and I remember it was awesome, but the ending stunk. So I think
that's part of we're goofing on Hayes, but truth be told, we're all very lucky to be working with the guy. He's probably the best in the business doing this job. And the one thing that I think the one thing that fuels him for his passion with the Maple Leafs and the upsets and losing, it's he's been a Leaf fan since he's been a kid, and he's watched the New York Rangers win the Stanley Cup. He's watched the Cubs win the World Series, and he's just thinking to himself, why can't I just watch this one time?
Right.
And that fuels his disappointment. And for people that are you're irrational and you go nuts all the time, I feel the same thing. And I played for the friggin' team. Like, I played with, so did you, Frank. Like, we were part of it. But just watching it from afar, you're like, can't they just do this one time? And they've had some pretty good teams, and they just, I don't know, they just keep having letdowns. Speaking of the Leafs, we got Masters Nation, by the way, OverDrive, Chesco, Noodles, myself, Jeff O'Neill. We've got Masters from Four Nations. I'm sure he'll be bringing us the heat with some transactions. And before we get into the Four Nations, we're going to do one last mood meter before we go to break, Noodles, where you are going to let us know where all the Canadian coaches are as far as where they lie going into this break, because I'm sure there's some that are on cloud nine and then some that are pretty pissed right now. We got Confirm or Deny, Tyson Nash, your buddy from Arizona, who does the Nash cast, who you probably had 7 million vodkas with this past weekend, and Michael Russo, who's tied in with the USA team at Four Nations. And there's some news out of Canada's camp today. What happened with the practice yesterday? MacKinnon is going back to center ice. Did Cooper look at it and say, I didn't like what I saw from you?
Yeah.
And the other, just before you go, Frank, the other news is the goaltender. Binnington's been named the starter. Jamie, what are your thoughts on that? That didn't surprise you, and you're comfortable with that?
I'm comfortable, because here's the thing. I think there was one guy that was on the team last year, and it was Jordan Binnington. I think we all said, okay, Binnington's going to make that team. Who's going to play with him? Is it Stuart Skinner? Is it Aiden Hill? Is it Logan Thompson? Is it Darcy
But is that
Kemper?
from the St. Louis Blues, like his play with the St. Louis Blues? Or is that Army up above saying if you just put that guy in net, he'll do the job, or a combination of both?
Two things. Both of them, exactly. Army knowing the guy. Also, I said this today. This guy, when we all were growing up, the three of us, when we played road hockey with our friends, outside, inside, street hockey, you named it, what was the game? It was always Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final. It wasn't, hey, Tuesday night in New Jersey, or it was, hey, I'm Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final. I'm Wayne Gretzky. I'm whoever your favorite player was. So I look at it, the two goaltenders that made this team, but the first one we're just talking about, Jordan Binnington has played a Game 7 Stanley Cup Final on the road and won it. He's actually made it to the dance and delivered. So I think there's other people, and Brian brings this up all the time, and he makes a great point. On paper, with all the other organizations or all the other countries, Canada is the weakest. With the Markstroms and Allmark and Hellebuck and all of these guys around him. But I will say this: Jordan Binnington has done it at the highest level and has had success. Same with Aiden Hill. Montembeault, I thought, was the outlier, but he has a history with Team Canada. Logan Thompson could be there. So it wasn't a surprise to me. That's a long answer to the question. It wasn't a surprise to me that Binnington was going to get the net for Game 1, just based on pedigree. And I thought he had a really good statistical season last year for the St. Louis Blues. It was kind of a bounce back for him. So it wasn't a big surprise for me.
And it's a hard tournament to gauge on how important goaltending is ultimately going to be, because Canada could go out there and absolutely pump teams, and then you were like, oh, it was 6-2. We never really needed a guy back there. But there's going to be one point, and I don't know if it's in the finals or just before that, where you're going to have a tight game, and it might be Hellebuck, it might be who knows who it's going to be.
Right.
But there's might be a game where somebody's got to go in there and play a hell of a game, or else the whole country is going to go nuts and say, what's up with our goaltending?
Yep. Yeah, you know what it is with Binnington as well? Like, he plays on a St. Louis team that is leaky, below average, whatever you want to call it. Like, they're not a great team. Aiden Hill, if you're going to compare it, if it's Binnington or Hill who starts, Hill plays on one of the best defensive teams in the NHL in Vegas. So you know what he looks like behind, a good decor, a good team, all that kind of stuff. Binnington's got something going on between the ears where I feel like he will really rise to the occasion, like he can have the confidence. And then you put a guy that's played on not a great team, now all of a sudden he's behind these world beaters, and it's like he goes from driving an average car to driving a Rolls Royce or a Ferrari. Like, what does that do for the guy? I think that goes such a long way with that guy.
It does. I say this all the time. These guys, to have success, they don't have to win you games. They just can't cost you the game. They can't lose you the game. So that's where we're all going to be judging this. If Canada wins, and you're right, they cruise to, hey, in the final 6-2, they beat whoever.
They won't even be talked about.
Nothing. Hey, you did a good job. Made a couple good saves, I'm sure. But if they can't score because the guy at the other end is standing on his head, or they struggle and they're losing games 6-3, or maybe they're losing 6-4. They're putting up 4, but they're giving up 6, and the goalie's not making saves. We're gonna be talking about it and saying, hey, goalie summit. We need, we don't have Marty Brodeur, Roberto Luongo, Cujo, Patrick Waugh, Grant Fear. You go back generations. It's always Canada's always had a huge marquee name, Carey Price, a Hall of Famer driving the bus with a bunch of Hall of Famers. It was said to me, maybe this team just needs Chris Osgood. You got a bunch of great players in front of you, and he did the job, and he was a good goaltender that did the job at the right time. To me, maybe that's what Team Canada is going to be. Get a good goaltender playing on a great team, and he delivers. That's all you need to do, if you ask me.
That's what happened with the USA and the World Juniors. Their goaltender, he had some wobbles in the middle of the tournament, and they said, you're our guy. You just got to get the job done when need be. Yeah. And that's exactly what he did. Yeah. And it's not that it's not that complicated, the breakdown of what you're looking for from Canada's goaltender. It's the standard saves, and you're probably going to be asked to make 2 or 3 that are kind of out of the norm. Isn't that like the normal breakdown recipe, Jamie, for the goaltender?
It is. That's what the goalie has to deliver. You just can't cost them. Make the saves you should, maybe a couple that you shouldn't, a couple great saves here or there, the timely ones, and that's all you need from the goaltenders. I think they're capable of doing it. I think Binnington, let's not forget, this guy's got a little chip to him. If you ever talk to him, you ever see the way...
That's what it is. There's something between the ears with this guy. He's got a different disposition. It's like he almost lives for this kind of stuff, and he hasn't had that in St. Louis in a long time. I think he will rise to the occasion. Jamie, you're right about he doesn't have to. He just can't lose you the game. And I think the way if you looked at John Cooper, I don't think we've spent enough time talking about John Cooper and how he does things, how he does things with Tampa and how that can be applied to this team. Andrei Vasilevsky, he just played back-to-back games on the weekend. He's Cooper has no problem saying, it's your net, you're going to run with it, we're not even thinking about anything else. So
by the way, Frankie, it would also be, we got 2 games that we must win here against divisional opponents. We need you to go both games. Yeah. And he always talked about it, and he mentioned today, we got gamers and winners. Vasilevsky is a gamer and would have shook his head and said, absolutely, I'm playing both.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And both games that Tampa just played on this past weekend, Vasilevsky won both of those games for them. Now, I'm not saying that's going to be the case for Binnington in Canada. I think he's going to be a good goaltender in there. I think if you start to evaluate how Cooper does things, it's if he's saying Binnington is the guy, Binnington is the guy. He would have to fall off a cliff in one game for Cooper to say, we're going to go to Aiden Hill now. I think they want it to be Binnington. And the other thing, when it comes to what they're going to do now with MacKinnon and Crosby down the middle, all that kind of stuff. Jamie, you just called 2 games, Sens versus Tampa.
Yeah.
I've called 3 games now this year where Tampa has played Montreal. I try and look out for the lines and see who's coming over the boards at certain times. John Cooper loves tweaking with lines. He loves playing head games with the other coach. He does it all the time. You'll see a line in warm-up, and he'll start the game with that line mixed up with one player not on it already. So I think, we can evaluate the lines all we want and say this guy's playing with that guy. We're going to see a blender early and often with this guy.
Well, how much do you guys put stake in coaches on the bench looking at their paper saying, oh, those lines that are out there taking the 3-on-2s, do you put stake into that? I would never have I would say any combination go ahead in warm-up because it doesn't mean anything.
Well, you're right. I think these guys in a short tournament that haven't played together, I think in the 2 practices they have and then a morning skate, you want to get a little bit of familiarity, but you do it in pairs. So MacKinnon and Crosby, they skate together. They're best buddies. You're going to know. I think in their minds they're we'll play those 2 together. Yeah. I don't know who's taking
It is risky,
draws.
though, with them being best buddies, though, Jamie. If it doesn't work, you have to say, guys, this ain't happening.
Well, you're right, but I guess my question would be, if it doesn't work, like, how do we know it doesn't work? Is it an off game and you come back with them, or is it Sid, his pace doesn't look like, it's in-game adjustments like Frankie just said. John Cooper's a master of finding an extra shift for a guy that he feels is going. You'll see Kucherov, and it's Kucherov and point, and instead of on that left side, Gensel, I saw them slide Cirelli there the other day. I saw them, they
put Paul there all the time. He'll throw, they had this kid called up, Gonsalves. He was throwing him up there. It's like
he was there.
He'll do anything he can to throw off your rhythm on the bench. And I wonder how the U.S. kind of counteracts that. The other thing that comes to mind is we all know who the shoo-ins were going to be, right? We could pick 6 guys. It's like those guys are non-negotiables on the team. But the U.S. had some guys that they picked that were not controversial, but those were, guys sitting around the boardroom kind of banging the table saying, I want this guy, I want that guy. Canada would have done the same thing. Now, when those two teams play, who made the right choices there? Which group was banging the table for the right guys, and who got the upper edge, in that bottom 6? I think that's going to be a fascinating thing as well, because, a guy like Dylan Larkin and a guy like Brandon Hagel, those guys, they're kind of self-starters, right? They're single kind of engines, and they're playing lower in the lineup here. Those will be just as much as the top 6 will be interesting storylines. Who's winning the bottom 6 battle? Those are valuable minutes.
Yeah.
What do you think about the line combos? Why, after one practice, did the coach see something where he was like, "You're going to go back to center ice"?
You want to know my honest opinion? Nathan MacKinnon is pushing up to Connor McDavid as, the best centerman in the world right now. What more does Nathan MacKinnon have to do to be considered,
I know,
1A,
but do you
1B
understand
with
it
McDavid?
wasn't some pigeon at center ice? It was Sidney Crosby.
Well,
I realize that.
I do. I saw yesterday, and there were some stats floated. If you look at McKinnon's face-off percentage is 44, 46, I believe, and Sid's is 52. He's, a lot Tavares is a lot better on draws than Matthews, in my opinion. And I think stats would lay it out there if you're a Leaf fan. So you look at it and go, I could see Sid maybe getting that assignment. Again, maybe it's trying it, but you have to think, centermen have to do the most skating. Who? Now, I thought to myself, why would Sid be at center ice when you've got arguably one? Now, you've got McDavid, then you've got MacKinnon as far as speedsters. And I thought, okay, maybe this is a systematic thing where they're going to blow the zone with the strong side winger and have him go, and maybe that's going to be MacKinnon. Blow the zone and try and stretch the play and force, whether it's Team Canada or your opponent, to have to back off, because we're going to be sending this guy every time to blow the zone. So you're going to have to actually stretch out coverage. To me, that's where I was thinking about tactical stuff, where if Nathan MacKinnon is a winger, man, you got to keep an eye on him. Center, he has to build speed, right? He comes back and builds speed. If he's a winger and blowing the zone off the draw, that's just a foot race now. You fire it down, he's going to win that race 9 out of 10 times.
I think he's one of those players, Jamie, anywhere in a forward position, you could put that guy on defense and you'd have to be on full awareness of where he's at. He's insane.
Yeah, he is. So
him and Sid, they will... it's like they almost have this cooked-in chemistry already. So regardless of who's down the middle and who's on the wing, I think those guys have a non-verbal communication thing going already that's going to work for them.
Yeah. Okay, boys, we got through the first segment.
Well, I have one comment too. It was brought to my attention. You want Hazy B's head to blow off his body if we took callers?
I'm fully. Doogie, when we.
It's like these guys took
Doogie, I swear to God, if we open the phone lines later in the day, maybe just a couple here and there, give me a number when we come back from break, and I'll blurt it out, and we'll take some calls later and watch that guy's head from Florida explode. All right? We're going to do it. Overdrive with Frankie Corrado, Jamie McLennan. We got Masters Nation coming up next. Overdrive on TSN 1050 and TSN 4. All right, we're going to head down to Montreal in a bit and talk to Masters Nation, who's probably, I saw an outrageous clip of him from Ryan Rishaug. He was eating a bowl of bird feed with a spoon or something.
Dry.
Did you guys see that? Dry,
Yeah.
like a dry mix, and he was eating it out of a spoon.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That was really concerning, and maybe even more concerning, was the look on Kenzie Lalonde's face as she watched that go on.
Yeah, she's the one that called it bird food.
Disgusted. Oh, my God.
Anyway, before we officially get into the Four Nations, Noodles, you put together the final mood meter before we close this chapter on the NHL regular season and get into the Four Nations. So give me your final mood meter. Who's in the best mood at the top of the Canadian teams, and who's in the worst mood?
All right. Well, I'm going to start it off. I mean, do you want me to go 7-1 or 1-7?
Go ahead. Yeah, 7-1.
Okay, 7 is going to be Marty St. Louis. I mean, for the longest time, not the longest, but we're talking, Frankie, month, 6 weeks. Montreal was fired up. The city's fired up. The team is like 13-2 and 15. And then now it's kind of fallen off a cliff. And Patrick Laine's in the doghouse, and the goalies aren't making saves, and the team's not scoring. Like, it's just, there's so much going on. So I think it's been such an emotional roller coaster. Marty St. Louis cannot be happy with what's going on. I don't know how you guys feel.
Cannot argue with that one. Cannot argue with that one. Okay. Go ahead, number 6.
Number 6 is Ryan Huska in Calgary. So, again, this has been a playoff team, surprise playoff team for the longest time. They were up 2 Cobb the other night. 2-0 with 7 minutes left. They lost 3-2 in overtime. And now
to the Kraken, I think.
To the Kraken. Now Vancouver has leapfrogged them. Vancouver's been much maligned, and now Vancouver's a playoff team, and it seems like if they get their act together, they're heading one direction. Calgary, not so much. So I think Ryan Huska's got to be pissed heading into the break.
Yeah, they were cooking, and they had some little bits of ups and downs, but the last 2 or 3 games before the break here, they've just had some poor performances where you wonder what they're going to do come deadline time. Yeah. Like, do they finally say, maybe we do move some guys out? Number 5.
Number 5 is Rick Tocchet in Vancouver. Has to be happy with his team at least responding, but still got to get the house in order. We got to get that Patterson guy playing. So for me, he's number 5.
4.
Yeah. 4 is Travis Green. I know they lost 3 in a row in Tampa, but if you said to him at the start of the season, you're going to be a playoff spot by the Four Nations, take it every day of the week.
Their goaltender, just hopefully he gets in and
he's
got the Swedish gear on today. I saw him. He looks good. He loves it.
Dude, he better not miss a game the rest of the season.
Dude,
now.
No kidding.
Yeah.
No
better
kidding.
not miss a game.
No,
Number 3, Noodles.
Craig Berube. They went 3 for 4 on the road. Teams on pace for 100 points, kind of up and down, had some injuries, but I think he likes where they're at, or potentially could be heading there.
He'll probably be a little bit chippy closer to the playoffs. Literally setting a tone. Number 2.
Chris Knobloch in Edmonton. That team was a tire fire, or a slow start, all of that type of stuff, and now they're tied for 3rd in the National Hockey League. So I think he's got to be pretty happy. Edmonton's set a real good record there since, I think, November 15th. They've been one of the best teams in the league.
He has got to be jacked with that start they had, and obviously number 1.
Scott Arniel, they're the best team in the NHL as far as points, I believe. Yeah, number 1 in the National Hockey League. Washington has a game in hand, but if you told Scott Arniel you're going to be number 1 in the league in points since the start, from the start of the season and at the Four Nations, you'll take it.
All right, there it is, the final edition of the Mood Meter before we take a deep dive into the Four Nations, which we are going to do now. And we are going to head down to Montreal and get the bird food eating Toronto bureaucrat, Mark Masters. What's going on, Mark?
Is he there? Maybe he hung up.
Are you gonna roll your eyes like?
You know what?
Gonna do a Hayes roll your eyes?
Oh, dog, shake.
I know where Hayes is coming from now because I was told speed it up a little bit. We got Mark Masters on the phone, so I'm like, all right, let's bring in Mark Masters, and he's not there.
But I know where he is.
I guarantee you, I know where he is. He's in the rink, and there's no reception in the rink, and it's probably going to be a sideshow.
I am a little worried just based on the fact that he was eating that bird food and it's so dry. Like, what if this guy just took like a big spoonful of it and now like it got stuck or something and he can't talk to us?
He's got cotton mouth. You know what, though? I'll be honest, though. Like, it's a bit of a hero move, don't you think? It's like, here, like, I'm going to eat this bird feed. You know where he learned it from? Jonas. The old Mark Masters, that's a hot dog, that's chicken fingers, because Jonas packs nuts and carrots and stuff like that. Yeah. He learned that from his buddy. We got to talk to him about it. Apparently he's there. I don't know if he's there.
Masters, are you there? Like, are you going to stiff us or what's going on?
I'm here. I don't know what happened before. I think the reception down here in the Bells of the Bell Center can be a bit spotty, but I am here now. What
is with the food you were eating with Rashog and Kenzie? Can you explain that before we get into the hockey stuff?
Yeah, it's just some homemade granola. Very lucky that my wife packs for me, and been eating it. I can't remember how long it started, but certainly Jonas was a big influence early on. And when I first joined the Leafs beat, I was, guzzling pop in the press box and going out and eating unhealthy. And Jonas really put me on the straight line to success, I feel like, and healthier snacks and granola and stuff. I know both Kenzie and Ryan were really impressed with me yesterday. So that was, I'm getting older now on the beats, and being at TSN, I try and take on more of a leadership role. So it was great to kind of set an example for them yesterday that way.
I know, but it's like the Four Nations. I actually know that all the media members, the old school guys, are fired up to be in Montreal. Like, have you not joined them? Because I know there would be cocktails later in the evening when everyone's filed their piece away and it's time to go out.
No, I mean, I did, I had a great night last night. Pierre LeBron took us out, which was great for Team TSN meal. It was awesome. TJ, Chris Johnston was there, Ryan Rashog. It was awesome. Bruce Garriock. We had a great meal, and then went out with, I had some great Perrier. I had some great sparkling water at a local watering hole with some of my colleagues, because obviously got to keep the mind sharp for today's big media day. But yeah, we had a good time last night. Montreal's such a great city. It feels like everyone's here. So yeah, let my hair down as much as my hair will go down these days.
Well, let me, we'll put a bow on it. Montreal can be done so many different ways as far as enjoyment. So have you seen anybody from the media side really enjoying?
Without naming names. You don't have to name names.
But where you're like, okay, this guy's really here. Four Nations comes in second as far as his efforts, because it's the nightlife of Montreal. Then Four Nations will get to it today.
I haven't seen that yet. I can't say that. I mean, it's early yet in the Four Nations face-off, so we'll see. But so far, it seems like everyone's been well behaved. But then again, I'm not staying out perhaps as late as others.
All right, Masters, let's get into a little Four Nations talk. Like, you're there, you're on the scene. What is, when everyone's getting together for the scrums, what is the number one storyline that everyone boots on the ground wants to get to first?
Yeah, I think there's just so much going on here. The availability is just overwhelming, to be honest with you. Like, everyone's available every day. It's crazy. Obviously, Sidney Crosby, was the big focus on day one from the Team Canada side. And then today was the naming of the starting goaltender. Jordan Binnington was the big story on the Canadian side. So those two stories, the goaltending and the return of Sidney Crosby from injury, and then to this kind of the captaincy of Canada has been big. And just from the Leafs side of things, I know I've been focusing in on Mitch Marner on the top line, Austin Matthews as the captain, William Nylander taking on a frontline role. All three of the Maple Leafs are in pretty premier positions here. So there's been a lot. It's hard. It's just everywhere you look, there's interesting stuff being said. Drew Doughty is holding court. He's hilarious. He's amazing. So fun to talk to him. Brad Marchand. There's just a lot going on. This is what makes these kinds of events so special, I think.
Masters, as far as the one thing we've been talking about and wondering about is the intensity of what's going to be happening on the ice. Have you got any sense from any of the players on any team what's going to be happening when the puck drops, as far as like intensity, checking, hatred? Do you think it'll all be there?
I think so. I mean, that's actually the story I'm writing up right now for SportsCenter. Was like and it's kind of drilling on Matthew Tkachuk and Brad Marchand, who are two of the premier kind of agitators, past whatever you want to call them in the NHL. Like, are they going to do that to their teammates? Like, is Brad Marchand going to get after Charlie McAvoy, Elias Lindholm on Team Sweden there? Like, is he going to go after them? Is Matthew Tkachuk going to, take a run at Sam Reinhart? I was curious, and Matthew Tkachuk was all business. He says Team USA is treating this as 4 Game 7s. Like, this is as meaningful as it gets for them. They've all waited basically their entire hockey lives to get to best on best for this generation of player, for the most part. and they're taking this very seriously. And I think I'm sure Saturday night for sure. I'm convinced Canada-US is going to be something special, and they're going to take it very seriously, and it's going to be intense. I don't know. I don't know what the crowd's going to be like tomorrow. I don't know how the players are going to deal with it for Canada-Sweden. I know I can tell you, like Marner, Nylander, Matthews say they're not talking to each other since they landed. Like they're just in with their teams, so they're taking it serious in that regard. Like there's no, they'll be friends when this is over, basically, kind of thing. So I think it's going to be intense. I mean, that's certainly what they're saying. There's some uncertainty with it. We'll see exactly how crazy is it a Game 7, like Matthew Tkachuk says. I'm not sure, but we'll find out a little bit more tomorrow night.
So, what do you make of Sidney Crosby and Nathan MacKinnon? It's Crosby at center. All of a sudden, it's MacKinnon. Do you think that's maybe some gamesmanship from John Cooper, or what's the thought process of how he's going to deploy his lines?
Yeah, you do wonder if maybe there's something tied to the injury that he was dealing with that would make it easier for him to play the wing instead of center. Because it certainly looked like he was going to be Crosby in the middle yesterday, and now today MacKinnon. Ultimately, either you're in good shape with either guy, as long as they're together. The question is what's Crosby going to look like once things get going for real? He's looked good in practices, looks like himself, but he hasn't played for a bit. He missed those 2 games, and is he going to be able to rev it up to the Sidney Crosby that we've come to know? So that's a big question mark going into the game. I mean, they have an extra guy; they could always rest him. But the way the tournament is built is like if you lose game 1, that could be it. Like there could be a 3-way tie at 2-1, and the third team's out. Of course, back in 2016, we saw North America get eliminated on a tiebreaker. They didn't quite understand what they had to do to pull the goalie late in the third period to get a win in regulation against Sweden. So it's going to be tight. There's very little margin for error, and I'm not sure. I think that's a big question mark going into tomorrow. Is Crosby going to be as close as he can be to 100%?
In your conversations with people there, is it kind of turned into a little bit of it's Canada versus USA, and Sweden and Finland are, out of sight, out of mind, or a tier behind, or are people giving, all 4 nations that are in this tournament a legitimate chance to win?
It does feel like there's that upper class. I mean, that's just my sense. Canada and U.S., and then we'll see Sweden maybe, and then Finland, just because of the injury they had to Heiskanen, and they've been dealing with some injuries, especially in defense. Like they're pretty thin on the depth chart there. It does feel like it's Canada, U.S., and then Sweden, and then Finland. But I've been at too many, just the World Juniors. Finland always goes in being doubted, and then they end up being the surprise, and they're there at the end somehow. So I think it's cautious the way that people are approaching it. I think Canada and the U.S., if the U.S. isn't the favorite, they're joint favorites with Canada, and then Sweden is certainly capable of beating either team, although, could they beat both of them in the tournament? That's a question mark. And then Finland is seen as the big underdog. That's just the sense being here.
Mark, since this, I mean, they've only been there on the ice a couple times, but the one guy that I haven't really heard from, and it's the guy that I think we could be saying when this is over, it was the McDavid tournament. Like, Have you seen anything from him kind of off the ice, on the ice, where you're like, this guy looks he's got that look in his eye, or it's just kind of been quiet around the McDavid front because it's usually he's the main guy and everything's about him? Yeah, it is. He has kind of been quieter in terms of just kind of coming into this tournament. I haven't actually, we've been dividing and conquering. Obviously, we've got Kenzie is here and Ryan Rashog, and I haven't been in a McDavid scrum yet, but I've reviewed it and I've listened back, and obviously I've seen him on the ice. He looks like McDavid. He looks like himself. It's hard to read, right, in terms of like fired up or whatnot. You'd expect like this is going to be. We've been waiting a long time to see this. McDavid, Crosby on the same team, Crosby the captain, but McDavid kind of the number one center. How's it all going to come together? And is he going to take control of this event like he's capable of doing? And he's playing with Marner, a guy who's never played with before. He's been pumped for that. Marner, it's 2 practices and then you're into the game tomorrow. There's just not a lot of time to generate chemistry. So, I don't know. It's hard to get a read on him again. As you mentioned, it's only been a couple of practices, but, it's hard to imagine, Canada winning the tournament if McDavid's not, top-level McDavid. So that's added to the list of things to watch tomorrow.
So, just speaking quickly of Marner, what do you make? Do you think this tournament could be a game changer for him on a lot of different levels? We know what he's like in the regular season, but playing some best on best or best against other countries' best, do you think this can help him, in a small amount, learn some next level type of compete and playing and maybe learning from some of the best that are on his team?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it was a little bit of a lighthearted moment in his media session. He was getting asked about losing to Nylander at the Worlds, and I guess he has a losing record against Austin, internationally as well. And he's just like, wow, you guys are really bringing us some fun stuff here. And it was kind of a lighthearted thing. But I'm sure for him to have a story where he's the guy and his team wins, and he got a silver at their World Championship, lost in the gold medal game to Sweden and William Nylander, in I believe it was the 2017 World. So I think for him to have a run where he's the top, kind of one of the top guys in Canada, goes on to win an big best-on-best international event, can only help him. Same thing for Austin Matthews, same thing for William Nylander. If you're a Leafs fan, you're hoping that someone's walking away from this event feeling really darn good about themselves and full of confidence for what they can do at the pressure levels. But I guess if you really wanted it to be someone, it would be Marner, just because he's taken so much flack in the market over the years because of the playoffs, rightly or wrongly. So yeah, I mean, I think it'd be great. He's right there with McDavid. McDavid's been praising him. I was in Edmonton right before the Leafs played there, and McDavid was comparing him to Draisaitl with the way he's able to slow down the game. There's a legitimate excitement and genuine enthusiasm for those two guys to play together for the first time in their careers. So yeah, I mean, I think it could be a big moment for Mitch Marner, kind of a coming out party of sorts. Just it's for a lot of guys, just because we haven't seen this kind of best on best stuff. But for Mitch Marner, for sure, he's certainly capable of it. He's having a career season. He's coming in with a lot of confidence. This could be one of his big moments.
Mark, because we haven't had best on best and, Crosby hasn't gone to the men's worlds in a long time, there's a lot of guys that this would be the first time that they get to see him, in the dressing room, kind of do the day-to-day stuff, see the leadership, all that stuff that you would notice behind the curtain, maybe if you were a player only. What do you make of the, is it like everyone's wanting to see what Sid does on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour, or is it just like he's one of the guys and we're all cool with it? But it seems like with Sid, it's like there's like a mystic kind of thing about him that everyone would want to see.
Yeah, that's certainly what they're saying, and it's hard to write. It's like it sounds like it almost doesn't sound like a real person when the guys describe him. It's like almost a godlike figure with just the human he is and the player he is and what he's done in his career. So I think that there's a good chunk of the Canadian dressing room that's just kind of looking over at him in awe and just grateful for the chance to work with him. And John Cooper waxing poetic today about texting with him and calling him and talking to him and getting to know him a bit more over this process. And everyone is just so excited for that. And that's one of the big things. Like I remember when Crosby had the injury and Marner was asked about it. I think we were in Seattle and he was, they're like, what about this injury? He might not play. And Marner was like, that would suck so much. And, really worried about it, not because necessarily of the player he was, but of course that's part of it, because he wanted the opportunity just to be in the dressing room and be teammates with the guy that he grew up idolizing. So yeah. But the sirens have faded when it comes to Crosby's status because he looks good to go. But
it sounds like we're all done here.
Yeah, we're all done. Let me just ask you before we get you out of here, Masters, if some media members say tonight's the night, like we're kicking off the tournament, we want everyone hanging from the ceilings tonight, will you partake in that, or will you just say I don't do that?
Not on a game night. No, we got rested up.
Dude, you're not a player.
I'm I gotta match them. I gotta be there reporting in the morning. I don't know. I think the NHL is doing a reception today, but it's a little earlier, so that'll be good for the media. I don't know. We'll see what the feelings like, but the tournament's just getting going here. You want to pace yourself, so we'll see. We'll see how the mood strikes.
All right, pal. Well, we appreciate you doing this, Mark.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right. See you later. There's Mark Masters, who's in Montreal, one of the greatest places for hockey people to gather, and he's eating birdseed out of a Ziploc bag with a spoon. I don't know. That's quite a scene, man.
And there's players that'll be out. There's players that'll be out later than him tonight. And he's like, I don't know. It's amazing, but it's also a little bit like it's like a missed
I think there will be. I think there will players that will say,
let's just go.
Yeah, let's go
have a
out
nice dinner, have some wine. It doesn't mean you have to be hanging from the rafters, but I feel like there will be players that will be out later than he will be. But he's a pro. That's why he's one of the best in the business.
And that's how you mask it, Noodles. You just start with dinner, and you just extend dinner. Dinner can take you right till midnight if you really want.
Exactly. It gets ugly. It can get ugly quickly in Montreal.
Frankie, were you old school? Did you go out the night before games? You didn't. I know you didn't. I can tell.
He's a pro.
There were. We'll talk. We'll talk.
All right, let's take a break. We got MJ coming up. We got our buddy Wes Chang. Raptors signing, Luka's debut with the Lakers last night. It looks more and more like that trade was just an absolute gong show for the Mavs. But we'll get to MJ soon after the break. This is OverDrive, TSN 1050 on TSN 4. So this JT Miller from the New York Rangers was asked about his transaction from the Vancouver Canucks to the New York Rangers and had this to say about it. I just feel super lucky that things worked out that way, the way they did, and I couldn't be happier to be a Ranger. Like, Frankie, you played in the Vancouver market. How is his exit viewed there? Like, is it just we need to move on because they got rid of a real good player, man? I know there was issues, and apparently it had to be done, but how are they viewing that there?
Dude,
because I'd be pissed.
Well, I mean, and you know how explosive stuff can get in that market. Like, they went from chanting this guy's name a year ago to saying he's the guy that has to go. Not one of these guys has to go. Like, he has to be the guy. So, like, I think stuff like that, when you leave and then you say something that, like, might disparage anyone back there, that's not going to play overly well there. Like, I don't know. That they play at some point this year, I think in March, but it's not in Vancouver. It's like a 1:00 game at MSG. I can't wait to see that game. And I know Miller and Pettersson are going to play each other in this tournament, but like that's not going to play overly well there.
Like for the longest time when it was Miller, Pettersson in Vancouver, I'm like, that's a cup contender.
Yeah.
And then this transaction goes down, and you're like, I don't know if they are with that Hedl guy as a replacement. Anyway, we got Mike Johnson coming up. We'll ask him about JT Miller, the Four Nations, Canada, roster, goaltending, all of it. We're going to do that next. TSN 1050 and TSN 4.